Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Short-Term Show special episode series on Branson, Missouri, where we are doing a 10-episode deep dive on how to buy a short-term rental in Branson. So we've got a few supplemental materials for y'all in addition to the content on this podcast over on our website. So any questions you have about purchase prices and searching properties, you can do that on our website. And we also have the AirDNA data, thanks to our friends over at AirDNA, income data on properties in Branson. So you can find these things at theshorttermshop.com. So www.theshorttermshop.com, purchase prices and income data. If you want to buy a short-term rental property with a short-term shop agent in Branson, you can email us at agents@theshorttermshop.com. Or if you just like us, you just want to hang out with us more, there's a few ways you can do that. You can join our Facebook group. It's the same title as my book. It's called Short-Term Rental, Long-Term Wealth. We're over there talking about short-term rental investing all day, every day. Or if you prefer to talk to us in person or virtual person, you can join our Zoom call that we have every Thursday. You can sign up for that at strquestions.com. We'll catch you guys over there. Hey, y'all. Welcome back to another Short-Term Show special episode series on Branson. We got Bill today to talk to us about some common things that you're going to have to manage around when you own properties in Branson. So how's it going, Bill?
Oh, it's going great, Avery.
Awesome. Glad to hear that. So let's talk about some of the things that you're going to have to deal with when you're managing in Branson. And luckily in this market, I don't think there's going to be a ton of things that are difficult to manage. Like, in beach markets, you have to deal with hurricanes and maybe people canceling because they saw on the news there might be a hurricane somewhere and then they just kind of preemptively cancel. So I don't think there's going to be a ton of things like that. So this might not be a super long episode, but we're going to talk about a few things. So I guess since we're talking about hurricanes, let's talk about natural disasters. So some markets have, like we discussed with beach markets, have natural disasters. Some markets have less so. So what happens in Branson, if anything?
Luckily, we're insulated from like forest fires, hurricanes. Those are big things that could wipe out entire areas. We don't have that. We do have, interestingly enough, we actually have a fault line here. So when we're getting our insurance, you have to do earthquake insurance. Totally random. I've never experienced an earthquake. It's not typical, but that is something that if someone's getting set up, they're like, wait a second, what? Earthquake? So that's just a random little thing to be aware of. But big thing to really look out for is the thunderstorm, tornado, hailstorm scenarios. So we have had a tornado here in the past in Branson. If you look it up on, history, news, you can see articles about it, damaging hotels. And, it's one of those things that it's hard to predict that though, because tornadoes are they're like these little random acts of awful occurrence. So the hailstorms, that's probably the number one thing to be factoring in though, is because these hailstorms will wreck cars. I was at my vacation rental that I own last summer, and I was actually just kicking it because it was one of those last minute cancellations. I was like, you know what? I'm going to go over there, hang out in my pool, just enjoy it. And big thunderhead clouds came through, and it was like, oh man. And then the hail starts, and you start to hear that clack, 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 and it just gets louder and louder. And you're like, oh man, because I had just gotten a new roof on my investment. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, this is a brand new roof. And after it finished, I ran outside and tried to scoop up some and put it in the freezer. And there were ones like golf ball size. And I've never actually seen golf ball size. People always say golf ball size, but
that would knock you out.
Yeah, it could potentially maybe I don't know, kill you, but it would definitely not feel good. So my car got my car wasn't destroyed, but it was definitely there's some permanent dents. So
yeah, actually last time I was in Branson, it did hail, but it was more like, Sonic ice cube size hail and not golf ball. So, I mean, is this something that you have to tell your guests about in the summertime? Hey, if it storms, there's a really good chance it's going to hail. Is there any way to even do anything about preventing any?
I don't know. I've even been in the predicament of what do I do if my car is out in the parking lot and this thing rolls through? It's do you go get tarps and throw it over? And the answer is you just kind of have to roll with it and hope it doesn't go too bad. So my community, like I said, we did have our roof get damaged to the point of where we got an insurance claim that we could get, a replacement. So that's generally what's happening most often, is just roofs will get pretty messed up. But luckily the new style, metal roofs and just general roofs are improving. So it's not something that, it's not like destroying your vacation rental and preventing guests from showing up. So.
Gotcha. There's not really anything you can do about hailstorms or tornadoes in terms of prepping like a hurricane. So it's just something you kind of have to be aware of. And
on the flip side of that, we're talking about the bad weather. Branson really has mild weather. We're talking like you could have days in January where it's 75, even 80 degrees randomly. It is in the, basically central portion of the US. So you'd assume it can get cold, but this last year we had two snow events where it was maybe an inch each time and it melts within a couple of days. So we don't have any blizzards. We do have an occasional one, like everyone freaks out because, it's not like Chicago, Milwaukee, Minnesota, where they've got salt trucks that can just, get the roads clear. If there is an ice storm, that is something that people need to be careful of. Just drive slow. And we do have hills here. So if there is an ice storm, probably going to shut the area down for a couple of days. But again, this is generally in the times of year that are January, February, which is the slowest kind of season here in Branson, where not a ton of people are coming. So
does that happen every year? Like, what's the snow situation there? Does it just kind of dust or ice for a few days? Is it gone within a day, or is it something that like you have to deal with on an ongoing basis?
So annually, it's probably like, 1 to 2, maybe 3 ice storms where it's just freezing rain hits the ground, and then maybe it'll snow on top of that, sleet. It's just mixed icy precipitation. So as far as just general snow, it's like we don't get like fat mounds of snow. Like there's no skiing around here. I'll just say that.
Yeah. Gotcha. So it is something though that happens so rarely that the city isn't really equipped to handle it. So everything does shut down, like you said.
Correct. Yeah. It's like, why put money into something that's such a random event that it's not predictable and something that they need to invest in preventing or managing.
So how do you manage that with guests? If it looks like that's going to happen, do you like typically lose power? Because I know in areas like that where there's a lot of trees and the power lines are not underground, you can lose power a lot of times when you have these ice storms because trees fall on it. Is that what happens there?
Yeah, absolutely. So just getting that utility company, calling them up, getting them on and aware that there's a power outage. If you actually see like lines go down, that's the one to, notify them immediately. But it's pretty quick. If power goes down, it's back up pretty quickly. So
gotcha. So it's pretty similar to some of the other like southeastern markets that are kind of mountainous, but it's not like a thing like in Colorado where there's infrastructure to handle that. How do you handle it with guests? Like, what do you tell them if it looks like that's going to happen and they're on their way in? What's your cancellation policy?
Great question. I've actually been lucky enough that I haven't had to experience that. So I don't even know really. I haven't had that happen. It's just such a rare occurrence, and it's at times of year that hasn't really impacted me. So.
Gotcha. Well, that's good to know that it doesn't really happen that much. So let's talk about one other thing, since everything is condos here, everything are condos, everything is a condo. Now I'm distracting myself with grammar. Are there ever times when there's going to be like a big major repair done on a condo building, like maybe doing all the exterior, doing all new roofs or something that would prevent guests from being able to come and stay?
Yeah. That happened in my community. We had, is obviously a lot of these have been built 30 years ago. There's just maintenance that, needs to be done. So our case was that the stairs had started to degrade and they needed to replace them. So there was a period where they basically, had to allot to get those things fixed. And there just wasn't any stair access, which when you're generally our buildings here are, like a set of 6 units. So there's like 2 up top, 2 in the middle, 2 in the bottom. So if there's like access issues, you just have to be aware of that and block off your calendar. Obviously try to work with your association and know when that's happening to block your calendar to prevent that from being booked and turning into a cancellation.
Gotcha.
So that's one. Really, I mean, the stair access is kind of one of the main ones that would prevent people from actually getting into the unit. There's been times where people just expect the pool to be open when they're like, wait a second, it's May. This pool should be open. You're like, well, it's gonna be open in a week. So that's a very sensitive thing to be aware of, is when does your pool open if you have a pool? That will really upset guests when they're like, wait a second, I thought we could do it and now we can't. So I don't know how to disclose that in a listing like appropriately, but it's one of those that if they reach out, to be very clear about timing and availability.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. So does it ever happen? I would imagine that it doesn't happen much, where the condo would not let you know 6 to 8 months, maybe even a year in advance of this happening, to where you're really going to have to cancel anyone other than just like block your calendar. Is that right?
It just depends on the communication of the particular association. I mean, yeah, they should do advance notice that they're going to do something. So definitely be an active participant in what's going on. You don't have to be on the board, but be aware of what's going down as far as plans, and show up to those annual meetings, because shoot, they could be raising fees or changing stuff, or, doing things that they want people's opinion on. And if no one shows up, then you get these old board members that are like, a lot of times they're not even like vacation rental owners. And they're just like people who are like, I've been here for however long, I'm just going to do what I want. And you're like, well, maybe I don't want you to do what you want. Maybe I want to, do something differently with the money, or invest in a different way. So definitely, if you get that chance, do show up.
Gotcha. Yeah. You always want to be aware of what's coming down the pipe. All right. What else do we have? So let's talk about, we've already talked about potential assessments that could happen. Let's talk about, you do an annual maintenance audit. What is that? And what time of year do you typically do that?
Great question. This is just a best practice. I mean, this is not required, but if anyone has the ability to go check out the unit that they own once a year, I mean, that's, I don't want to say bare minimum, but that's something that would really give you eyes on what's going on with the property. Because if you start to own your investment for, however long, things are going to add up, and you're not going to know exactly what those things are. Things like maybe an item was taken by a set of guests, like a wine opener, or I've had my Roku. I had a Roku stick on my main TV that guests actually took. They basically were taking it out to plug in whatever HDMI thing they had. And then someone must have grabbed the power cord that connects to this stick. So then it was basically like rendered useless. So it was like just those little things that, you gotta kind of have to be aware of. So with an annual walkthrough, I mean, it's just literally like stay at your place like you're a guest and try everything, turning on lights, turning them off, testing all of your stuff in your kitchen, doing it, like pulling out all the drawers, make sure they don't like get stuck on anything. I mean, you're basically looking for anything that's not effective or working. So I've had guests I had a situation where a guest left a 4-star review. It was one of those where it's like, okay, like, thank you for pinpointing all these little items. They called out that my, the shower liner was getting a little bit pink, which I'm like, okay, well, I was due to get those installed. So thank you for publicly telling me that I should do that. I'll go do that today. Things like the pulls. So I had bifold doors. I don't know how you feel about bifold doors, but I absolutely cannot stand them. They're always
off the track. They never work.
Always off the track. They are like really hard to repair. They never are straight. So I had one in my kitchen where the actual pin just flat out was like no longer operating. So I was like, okay, let's get a handyman over there. Let's just take this thing off. It's a pantry door. We don't need the bifold. Just take it off. It'll be exposed. Not that big of a deal. So all these little things that are like, also, just progressive upgrades, like cheap ones. Like I went and got new fans. So I had a couple fans that were old, and I'm like, you know what? I'll spend $400 or $500, get all brand new fans because it looks nicer. Because these are just things that, over time, it's like, it's not a huge cost out of pocket, but it's just going to look nice. So I definitely recommend that, because if you've got eyes on it, and then when you get guests, for example, this happened 2 weeks ago. They called and said, hey, we're just, want to make sure that air mattress is working. We just don't know. If you don't have one, we could bring one. We just want to call and make sure, there's concern. And I had just like 3 or 4 days prior gone and audited my air mattresses by filling them all up, sitting on them, hearing, okay, this one's got a hole, throw it out. These others are good. So I have 3 that are functioning because I bought another brand new one because I didn't know what the situation was. So I have 3 functioning air mattresses. And that was something that I had never done when I first got mine. I was like, they're there somewhere. I don't know. I bought it with someone that had one. So we're good, I think. And then you get these random like, hey, the air mattress isn't working. And you're like, I don't know. Like, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. What happened? And when you go in and actually like get your hands on everything, you can speak with tacit knowledge and be like, yeah, we've got this covered. I know I have 3. One's a twin, one's a king that's short, one's a king that's tall. I just checked them. We're good. And then you've got contingency plans in case, one does end up eventually going. So those are just things that I feel like I've got peace of mind now that if people call, have issues. Another one too is I had guests that talked about, hey, we don't have hot water. Like, we're freaking out. We're not gonna be able to take a shower. And it was like, so in my particular unit, it just takes a little bit for the hot water to start going in certain, like, especially in the main sink. So I had an emergency plumber go out there because I had a heating element go out in my water heater last year. And I was like, oh man, here it is again. Maybe I just got to get a new water heater, but it ended up being just had to run it longer. So these are all things that, like, when you pick up experience over time, you just know what to watch out for. And you've got more knowledge of how it works. So
yeah. Anything else maintenance wise that we need to pay attention to? So guys, I think that at this point in the series, you're probably realizing that this is a very easy market to own in. We don't have to deal with a lot of, there's not a lot of natural disasters. There's not a lot of like crazy things going on. No wells, no septic, all condos. Even the detached ones that look like cabins are technically condos. So it seems like this is a pretty easy area to own, like great for beginners or experienced investors.
Yeah. I mean, the HVAC is definitely something to be getting serviced annually because those tend to be so finicky. But I mean, really, there's not a lot. There's not a lot of big ticket items that can come out. And I think that's something that I need to put out there is when people are trying to run and crunch numbers on estimates for annual maintenance fees, they're putting in massive amounts. Like, I've seen people put like 3%. It's like, that's like 16 grand. Like, what, where are you getting this from? And I will just put that out there. I've had a year, like my first year I owned mine, I spent less than $1,000 on all maintenance for the entire year. And it's like, because the HOA is doing a lot of the heavy lifting for the exterior and the building maintenance and the lawn care and all that, I mean, it was really minimal. So not to say that's the standard. I mean, there could be, new water heater that needs to happen or, God forbid, a brand new HVAC. But if you're taking care of your things, I mean, it shouldn't be massive amounts for annual maintenance.
Yeah. So you've already kind of talked about items that get up and walk away and kind of replacing those. So I mean, there are other markets that we've done this same podcast on that have been like an hour and a half because there's so many little things that you have to watch out for. But what else have we not talked about that you might have to deal with a few times a year in terms of maybe it's not replacing anything or maintenance related, but guest gets there and Silver Dollar City's closed or something. I don't even know what that thing would be. But is there anything like that?
Christmas decorations.
Oh,
so
let's talk about that.
November 1, this is super, okay, I'm going to say it as like an outsider, even though I live here now, but when I moved to Branson, I heard there's this whole Christmas thing here, which is after October 31st, Halloween, the area goes into full-blown Christmas mode. So the city actually mandates that all businesses need to hang lights, and our entire area becomes like a Christmas holiday season. So this is part of what brings people deep into the latter portion of the year. Again, awesome for owning vacation rentals because this is like a season that people specifically come here for because this is what Branson celebrates. So with that in mind, Silver Dollar City has one of the craziest like Christmas light displays you'll ever see. They have, I think, 6 million lights. I was told that and I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. You got to check out like a YouTube video and just look at what it looks like. I mean, I think they did. You have you been to the Dollywood Christmas display?
I haven't been at Christmas. I've only done Dollywood in the summertime.
Yeah, I think that's pretty. They're both pretty intense, like just visual marvels. So, all that being said, you got to have some Christmas decorations, regardless of what faith you are. Like, you go get yourself some. Like, I have a fake Christmas tree. I've got wreaths. I've got little like nutcrackers. I mean, all these little things. So for that 2-month period, you throw that up, people will like notice that, depending on what type of property you have too. If you got a really larger lodge style property, I mean, you could do a lot more. But definitely some degree of where if you have just a little touch of something, and you could keep it in your owner's closet, or I even keep it in one of my spare bedroom closets, just in a plastic tote. So that is something that, people will notice in a good way if you do something. So only challenge with that is just making sure like your cleaning company removes that stuff, so that when you get your bookings in like March, people aren't like, what the heck? Why is there like a wreath here and a Christmas tree? Like, this is what?
Yeah. Yeah. And so do your cleaners, are they typically the ones who set that up if you're out of state?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I've never actually gone and put that stuff out. That's just something that they will do as a courtesy. They understand too. It's like, that's important.
Yeah. And there's some markets too that's important, and others that it's not. Like our mountain properties, it's really important. So we do that. Our beach properties, we don't bother with it. So you really do have to like pay attention to who your guest avatar is and what your seasonality is. Here, obviously, it makes sense because people come there during that time of year. In our Florida properties, people don't really come there during the winter, so no need to do it.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, again, I didn't really realize until I'd gotten here and owned mine and had eyes on it, that this is like extremely important, that if you're not doing it, then you're not keeping up with what everyone else is doing. So
yeah. What else? Anything else that you kind of have to do? Is there anything specific that guests will expect, but maybe is not a good expectation? Like, is there anything about the market or owning properties here that will surprise them? Like, for example, are they going to be scared like of wildlife? I don't guess it's going to be a big problem in condo buildings, but I've seen in some markets where there's like a bear on the porch and it freaks them out.
Maybe because we have so many condos, the fact that a lot of the neighboring units will be occupied. So there is a situation of where there isn't as much privacy as a cabin in the woods with your own acreage, So that situation where I've got an owner hitting me up saying, hey, your guests were really loud and it's a problem. So you need to like tell them to be quiet, because the people that I have as guests are upset with me. And now I'm going to get a bad review because they're upstairs bouncing around, making noise. And it's an awkward situation, because then you're like, okay, well, theoretically, my people are fine and dandy. If they're making noise for the other person, that's kind of their problem. But it's also like, from a political working with your neighbor, you don't want to piss them off. So it's this very sensitive situation where you got to be diplomatic. So definitely want to let your guests know, hey, there's quiet hours. Hopefully that wasn't communicated in the check-in and instructions and rental agreement. Like, you got to have some respect for your neighbors, because we are all sharing the same building. So, and then, some people don't worry about it. They know people are on vacation and whatever, everyone's having a good time. So it's not a huge deal. It's just, so the occasional guests that decide to roll back at like 12:30 at night and then stay up for another 2-3 hours, having a little party,
Yeah. Yeah. You gotta remember to remind them of that. Put that in your guidebook. If you're in a condo, like actually my office is downstairs from a condo that I own. That's a short-term rental upstairs. And there are a ton of kids up there and they are running around like a herd of elephants. They're having a great time. I actually was walking out to the coffee shop earlier and they were on the front deck and I could hear the mom and the kids talking about how much they loved it. And I was like, oh, that's really nice. But if I didn't own it upstairs, I'd be like, man, they need to chill. But like, guys, run around as much as you want, enjoy it. But I can definitely see how when you're dealing with other owners and other guests, you want to make sure that they're aware that there's people underneath them.
Yeah. And then everywhere here is pretty much, you have to drive everywhere. So not a lot of walking to most things, whether it's
Are there many Ubers?
restaurants.
That's something that's important to know.
Ooh, good question. Not a ton. We have them. They exist, but they are not as prevalent as I would hope. I think part of it's because everyone has to get here by car anyways. It kind of creates this, well, we already have a car, so why would we take that? That is a good question though. We do have them, but they can be challenging. I've had scary scenarios where, I've gone out relatively late and then it's like, well, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get back because there's like one guy driving around town. And it's like, so that's a great question.
Yeah, it's like that in a lot of our markets. Like I took an Uber here recently and because I had to go get my Jeep from the Jeep place, which is I could talk about that for an hour. And he asked me all these questions and figured out I was in real estate. And he was like, oh, let me find you on Instagram while he's driving, and figured out that that he's messaged me before and I didn't write him back. So it was like a reckoning of like, oh yeah, I messaged you about being a real estate photographer and you never wrote me back. And so I felt like a total jerk the rest of the way. And that's the only Uber driver in town. So you want to make your guests aware of that, because sometimes when people are coming from big cities where Uber is just everywhere or Lyft, they think that they can rely on that when they get here and they just can't.
That is a sinking feeling when you Uber out and you can't get back and you're like, oh no, what am I going to do? Call the taxi company? Who does that? Right. Like, on that note too, we got to talk about traffic. So with Branson being, we talk about the strip. I mean, this is similar to the, Pigeon Forge traffic. We don't have as many lanes. So we've got 2 lanes. So generally you talk about peak season, like this is brutal traffic. So trying to avoid the strip if possible. Obviously, if you're a guest and you want to go to there, you have to go there. So just people that live here generally avoid it during peak season, just because it's so challenging. Like doing a left turn is terrifying. I mean, plus people start to just be the worst drivers ever. They're like, I mean, I don't want to stereotype, but I'm going to. It's like they tend to be very country drivers that you look at you're like, oh, Arkansas again. And they will turn around like a U-turn, like in the middle of the street. And you're like, you can't do that. That's like, there's double yellow line there. You cannot do that. And or they'll just like park in the middle lane. Like, where are we going? You're like, you can't do that either. Get off, go to a parking lot. We have plenty of parking here. There's no issues about that. But keep your head on the swivel if you're driving in Branson in June, July, and August. I'll just say that. That is definitely like I haven't had any accidents, but I've been like, man, if I wasn't paying attention, like it could have been bad. So
yeah, good to keep in mind. So transportation, if you're flying in, you need to rent a car because you're not going to be able to really find an Uber. And when you do rent a car, be careful and pay attention. All right. What else? Anything else that we have to deal with on a regular basis managing in this market?
Oh, this is Silver Dollar City. If you're going into it, most people are coming from the east, and then it's a left turn to get into the entrance into Indian Point. That can back up for miles. And I've seen it, and I've been like blown away that people don't just get in the right lane, go past the stoplight and turn around and come take a right, because that is an absolute hack. So if you have one in Indian Point, or you want to go to Silver Dollar City and skip an hour worth of traffic, get in that right lane, go through that light, turn around, and then you've got a right turn. So
good to know. Awesome. Anything else before we go? It's pretty easy one. Easy to manage here.
Yeah. I mean, as far as like your welcome book for guests, I mean, how do you feel about welcome books in general?
Gotta go touch day. Gotta be digital guidebook. I don't like the manual ones, for lack of a better word, because I want to know stuff before I get there. Like if I'm coming in, it's going to be late. I'm dragging 2 toddlers. I want to know what's in there. What do I need to grab at the store on the way in? All that stuff. So I
need to upgrade. I still have the manual one. It's one of those things like eventually
Diane is gonna skin you.
Yeah, well, hopefully she doesn't listen to this episode.
Tattle, watch yourself.
Definitely. No, I bring that up though, because people have absolutely asked, like, where's a good place to eat? Branson is definitely an eater friendly area. So I've gone out and tried all of my picks, and I try to, think I have good taste. So having that, hey, go here, go here, go here. Don't go there. Don't go there.
Well, where do you go? Where's if you're going to Branson and you want to have a nice dinner, where's the best place to go?
So locals are going to kill me for saying this, but Downing Street Poorhouse in Hollister, that is the jam. That is
I think I might have gone there.
Did you? Maybe you asked me when you popped through.
I can't remember because there were only so many places we could get with the bus. And is it looks like a really old school, English pub?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I went there.
Yeah. What'd you think?
Oh, it was great. It was great. I was pretty stressed out. Luke was at the end of the road in the bus with the kids. The kids were screaming. Luke was getting really cranky. So I was just in there trying to get some to-go food and leave. But I do remember it being really, really good.
Next time you come through, we got to de-stress you. I feel like you've got this this perpetual I was stressed in Branson thing. We gotta cut through that. Downing Street Poorhouse, my favorite. On the Landing, there's some good options over there. I really like for pizza, Mr. G's Pizza. That's in downtown Branson. A super fly under the radar place for a good lunch it's called Pickin' Porch. You're picking something. There's no G, so it's an apostrophe. Pickin' Porch. It's a craft mall that has one of these restaurants and that sits tucked in the back that just has just phenomenal food. So those are the top three that I would just throw out. I'm not going to say any anti ones because I don't want to have any bad vibes. I will say there's a burger joint on the Strip that only takes cash. That was a bit annoying that I went to when I was just didn't have any cash on me. And they're like, well, there's an ATM. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Right. Just let me pay for my dang thing. I mean, this is the COVID era, right? We don't take cash. It's you're going to really be we don't take credit cards. Get out of here.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That kills me with Amex because I only typically carry Amex with me. And they're like, we don't take Amex. I'm like, why? Well, because it's an extra service fee or something. And I'm like, but what? I will pay that service fee for you to just take my card and not give me a hard. I think that happened recently at a nail salon. And I was like, I don't have any, I can Venmo you. And they were like, well, can your husband come? And I'm like, no, my husband can't come. He's 20 minutes away and the kids are asleep. This is just take my money.
Yeah. That is hilarious though. Just the modern era of just being able to give people money it's just cool your jets. I want to give you your money. I have it, but don't make this something that I have to get all stressed and worked up about. Yeah.
Yeah. You're going to I haven't lived in New York in a long time, but there are so many places in New York that only take cash, period.
Also on food, Silver Dollar City has probably the best theme park food ever. I mean, you've been there, right? Would you agree?
I agree with that. I had the I can't remember what it was. It was some kind of monkey bread type thing. Yeah. Oh God, so good.
I'm getting hungry just thinking about it, but they've got you got everything you can imagine. Because I've been to bigger theme parks like Six Flags, Worlds of Fun, and they just have your standard fare of burgers and hyper overinflated priced whatever, but Silver Dollar City has some pretty incredible food. So
it's some kind of really good barbecue bowl with jalapenos and cheese and some vegetables and stuff in there. It was really good. I can't remember. And there's a little food court area thing. I can't remember. There's probably 1,000 places.
Yeah, we don't really have a bar district either, too. So that was weird for me because I'd come from big cities where it's this is the area where people go out at night. So we got the Paddle Wheel, which is by the Landing. It's a interesting bar that sits out on the water. I think you said you RV'd over there, right?
We did. We stayed somewhere over there on the river.
So that's where one of the main bars is, but we don't have too many nightclubs or we don't have a ton of nightlife out here. So this is definitely more family friendly area with there are bachelorette parties will come out here. So we've got moonshine tasting at the Landing where you can go get real sloppy if you want.
Awesome. All right. Well, before we go, we're coming towards the end of our time. Anything else that you run into pretty often with either guests or management in this market?
Just your standard, people break stuff, get a broken lamp, get a whatever. So just being ready to handle replacing stuff. I mean, it's not common. It's just when you've got a number of guests staying your place. I mean, over time, if you don't have that's why I recommend getting high quality stuff. Don't get cheap stuff because if it's quality enough, it should last. So it's kind of that, I'm sure you agree, is like, don't go too high end, but definitely don't go too low end, because you're just going to end up paying for it eventually by having to replace it. So,
and it's just going to get you a bad review too, because you're not going to say, oh, this is broken. You're not going to discover it yourself. A guest is going to discover it and they're going to give you a bad review. Not always, but it's something to think about. So just get something, decent quality up front. Totally. It's more efficient. It's going to save your reviews.
Also, this is something I have not experienced yet. Now that I thought about it, is the ACs, like the units like freezing up. So if people try to crank their air conditioning down too low, because we have so much humidity and heat in the peak season, that it'll actually freeze up the unit. And when that happens, it basically stops like working. So you have to get basically an HVAC guy to go out there and take care of it. And if you're like 90 degrees out with crazy humidity in the summertime, like your property is going to start cooking your guests alive. So having like a floor temperature that you set, so they don't set it below that, because if they go like, I think it's 70 is what I do in mine. But if you go to because if you put like, someone goes in there and drops it to like 62 degrees in like peak summer, it's just going to freeze up the unit. So that's just a quick little random tip that can happen.
Good to know. Well, guys, if you want to buy a place with Bill in Branson, email us at agents@theshorttermshop.com. Or if you just have more questions, there's a few ways you can get those answered. You can join our Facebook group. It's called Short-Term Rental, Long-Term Wealth, same title as my book. Or we have a weekly live Zoom Q&A call that you can join by signing up at strquestions.com. Thanks, y'all.